A tsunami evacuation site sign is shown on high ground near the House of Huuayaht in the village of Anacla in Pachena Bay, BC, Wednesday, January 14, 2015. Jonathan Hayward, Canadian press experts say there's a 1 in 3 chance a damaging earthquake will hit the south coast of British Columbia in the next 50 years. Whether it turns out to be the big one, is hard to say. But one worst-case scenario envisions a shallow 7.3 magnitude quake beneath Vancouver that causes extensive or complete damage to 30% of buildings across the metro region, resulting in 9,200 fatalities and 120,000 injuries. With that in mind, the National Post submitted a Freedom of Information request to BC's provincial government for records related to the province's ability to respond to a catastrophic earthquake. The province released hundreds of pages of documents earlier this month, revealing that while BC has undertaken a number of initiatives to shore up its preparedness, many important gaps remain. Here are some of the findings. When the province practiced its earthquake response, they found some problems. In 2016, the province held its first ever full-scale exercise to simulate a response to a major earthquake or tsunami. It was based on a chilling scenario. A 9.0 magnitude quake erupts 150 kilometers off the southwest BC coast, generating a tsunami with 20-meter surges that destroys much of the Port Alberni region. The riverfront in Port Alberni, BC. Steve Bosch, Vancouver Sun. While the 4-day exercise was deemed a success, documents show there were some shortcomings, including major challenges related to emergency support for First Nations. Personnel also had difficulty determining the true status of damage to major infrastructure and utilities. The province also found that while personnel were working hard, there was no way to know in real time, are we doing the right things? And some response tasks were delayed due to staff interrupting each other to try to define meaning of acronyms or merely guessing. Asked about these gaps, Emergency Management BC (EMBC) officials told the Post in a written response it has been working to address the issues raised through an improvement plan, who would coordinate the disaster response. When a major disaster happens in the province, the coordination of the overall response and recovery falls to EMBC. It has the authority to activate the Provincial Emergency Coordination Centre located at EMBC headquarters in Victoria. It was activated to deal with the recent heavy flooding in BC's southern interior, for example. But a report from August 2016 states that while the current system is equipped to handle single incidents like floods or wildfires, it is not as well suited for a complex catastrophic event where there are multiple lead agencies, ministries with competing demands. Tsunami evacuation road signs are posted along the Pacific Rim Highway in between Tofino and Ucluelet on Tuesday, Jan. 23, 2018. The Canadian Press, org XMIT, MMR 100 Melissa Renwick, CP. The report says the current system will not be able to manage and assign the large number of external resources, nor will the configuration appropriately accommodate the extraordinary resources required to support an effective response. The report contemplates the creation of a separate operations center, called the Provincial Earthquake Response and Recovery Center, that could be activated to deal with more complex disasters. The report stated that Vancouver Island was still likely the best place to locate the center as the majority of required staff live in the Victoria area and that the physical space would need to accommodate 600 people. When the Post inquired about the status of the proposed center this month, EMBC officials indicated that its name had evolved to become the Catastrophic Emergency Response and Recovery Center, CERRC, but that it was still in the conceptual stage. Locations for the center were still being considered on both Vancouver Island and the BC mainland, officials said. In a follow-up email, ENBC officials said that wildfire and flooding events over the past year have challenged the amount of time we are able to dedicate to CERRC planning. That said, ENBC is committed to planning for catastrophic events and ensuring the CERRC is able to respond quickly in case of such an event, and that a major earthquake exercise to test CERRC concepts is planned for the future. Critical infrastructure list, inventory of seismic investment needs under wraps. The documents outlined the need to develop a list of provincial, critical infrastructure assets that would be in line for priority restoration after a catastrophic quake. On a related note, the documents indicated that a BC engineering firm had been chosen to develop a provincial strategy to guide seismic investments and that a final report was due from them in June 2017. Asked whether the list and report had been completed, ENBC officials told the Post it had received a final report and was in the process of asking the province for feedback on whether its recommendations should be adopted. These decisions will likely involve Cabinet and its committees. It would not be appropriate to release the report at this time, although we hope within perhaps a couple of months. Costs. Arrival of early warning system uncertain. The Cascadia subduction zone, a fault line created by the oceanic crust of the Juan de Fuca plate moving under the continental crust of the North American plate. City of Vancouver. In 2016, the province announced it was spending $5 million to develop an earthquake early warning system, involving the placement of underwater sensors in the Cascadia subduction zone, a fault line created by the oceanic crust of the Juan de Fuca plate moving underneath the continental crust of the North American plate, as well as land-based sensors on Vancouver Island. The hope is that the sensors can pick up the initial release of energy from an earthquake, known as primary or P waves, before the arrival of secondary or S waves, which cause the actual shaking. A briefing document from October 2017 indicated the project, being developed by Ocean Networks Canada, was scheduled for completion in March 2019. A separate document noted that other jurisdictions that already have early warning systems in place face significant annual operating costs. In Japan it's $1 billion, in California it's $28 million. Asked whether this project was on track and what costs might be involved, ENBC officials said Ocean Networks Canada has recently stepped up efforts to meet the deadline, but it is still too early to determine when such a system will be in place. Officials also said it is too early to say what the operating costs will be. The next provincial earthquake exercise is years away. Records show that BC isn't scheduled to have another full-scale earthquake exercise until November 2021. Asked why these drills weren't happening more frequently, ENBC officials said full-scale emergency exercises involve several years of joint planning and gateway training and exercise events. Email, dequan@postmedia.com. Twitter, Dojuan.